okay.
Good morning, everybody. Dave Schmidt along with Matt Nestor and producer Tom Warner. Let's get right to this. With us, a very special guest, the guru of the IHSA playoff system, Steve Soucie from the Kankakee Daily Journal. And Steve, did you get your nap in?
Just a short one, to be totally honest with you.
How was it last night? You know, I know you had a late game. I saw you had a late game, and there was a lot of 4 and 5 teams. Did it keep you busy last night?
Well, last night was really kind of a crazy situation that broke forth because, you know, the way that I do this is I project what I think is going to happen in Week 9, and what ended up happening was we had 9 teams last night that were playing at 4 and 4 that either were playing a team with an equivalent record or playing a team with a better record last night, which, I mean, obviously means that they had a long shot of getting into the tournament. We had 9 of them rise up and beat that team with a better record or an equivalent record. So that was a bunch. Usually that will be maybe 2 or 3 teams will do that.
Mm-hmm.
There were 9 of them. They're not all going to get into the field because of playoff points, but a large majority of them are, so there was a lot of moving around last night.
Yeah, I was saying, when I was looking at the outlook going in, I mean, there was a lot of those 4 and 4 teams that had a lot more playoff points than some of the 5 and 3 teams. You know, how many teams, you know, when you're looking at it, do you think are going to end up getting squeezed out at 5 and 4?
Well, right now I've still got 267 teams that have at least an opportunity to get into the field right now. There are 2 more 4 and 4 teams today that are playing teams with significantly better records. So I think what we're going to end up with is a list of 7 teams that are going to miss the field on playoff points, and that went up about double what I originally thought that was going to be heading into this week. So the playoff point total, I thought it was going to be pretty low. It's still going to be pretty low, but not quite as low as I thought. Right now, we are sitting in a situation that if you don't have 35 playoff points, you're probably going to miss the field.
We have an area team, Freeport-Akron, who won last night, but I think they're at 34. Matt just looked it up. Do you project them as not making it then?
Right now, I'm waiting to officially confirm this with all the official scores from last night. The IHSA puts those up at about 9 a.m. But if I had to make a call right now, Freeport-Akron will be the last, the first team out of the field.
Wow.
In 257, which is not where you want to be.
Right. You know, the other big thing that's happening this year, obviously, is, you know, the seeding process, especially when you look at 7 and 8A. You know, have you done too much looking into that in how big of a difference that's going to make maybe in some potential matchups?
Well, I mean, when it comes right down to it, I mean, it seems to be the distribution is going to be somewhat similar to what it's been in the past. The big thing for me when I look at how it changed, especially in 7A, usually you have the same teams being grouped with the St. Louis area teams, the geography. That's going to be mixed up a little bit now. You're going to see those teams sprinkled throughout the field, some different opponents. I mean, I was looking at it last night, and, I mean, there are a ton of those St. Louis area teams that are going to make the field, but those that are going to be playing some different teams than maybe they have in the past. It's been kind of repetitive in terms of the kind of south suburb schools that always get shuttled down that way. And now with the 1 to 32 seeding, it's open to everybody. So there'll be a little bit more bracket diversity than there's been in the past.
We're talking with Steve Soucie, I think you're the sports editor, right, at the Kankakee Daily Journal?
That's correct.
And you are the guru of this. When Edgy Tim and people like that are patting you on the back, Steve, that's pretty good, high honor. Let's talk about the playoffs brackets. Is there any surprises out there that we're going to say, oh, wow, we didn't see that coming, or is it going to be just a normal bracketing tonight?
I think for the most part, I mean, last night, while there were some teams that fought their way into the bottom of the bracket, there weren't a lot of teams at the top of the brackets that that were really shuttled around with significant upset losses. The one that stands out to me, obviously, is Chicagoland's number 1 team last night lost. Homewood Flossmoor in 8A. They lost. So that is one change at the top of the bracket that's going to be interesting. The bubble lines still are pretty appealing just in the sense of who's going to end up where. There's a lot of notable schools sitting on the fence between classes. I think right now some of those that are most intriguing to people around the state, I think Sterling Newman's going to end up as a 3A team. I think Peoria is going to end up as a 5A team. And that's, I mean, those are the ones that people have really kind of been eyeballing on the bubble. Princeton is another, and I think they are going to end up in the 3A field.
I was going to say two others I've been watching. They seem to be going back and forth week to week is Phillips and Geneseo. Obviously Phillips bouncing between 3 and 4A, Geneseo 4 and 5A. And that could make a big difference for each school depending where they end up at it. Where do you see them landing?
Well, Phillips is, after originally, like way back 3-4 weeks ago, the original fields were making it look like 3A was a real possibility for them. I don't think so anymore. I'm 95% confident that they will be a 4A team. Geneseo is a little bit more interesting. For the last 3 weeks, they've sat exactly on the bubble line between 4 and 5, and they've fallen in 4 each time. And I think that's going to happen one more time tonight.
Wow.
And they're going to end up in 4 still. They are, once again, very, very close to that line, but they've been hovering on it all season long, and I think we're going to finish with them at spot 127 in the field, which 128 is the exact level. 129 would have them in 5A.
When you look at all this, Steve, so far, what do you see as being a really competitive class this year? We're saying, wow, that is really loaded.
Well, when you look at some of the brackets in general, because now that we have eliminated the quads in the smaller classes, it gives you a really good idea when you're looking at things at maybe which side of the bracket is stronger than the other one. The one that stands out to me right away is when I look at 4A, the 4A North bracket is loaded. It's just loaded. Princeton's been the one that's been moving in and out of 3 and 4A, but with them or without them, that bracket has the potential to have possibly 8 teams with 8 or more wins on that side of the bracket, which it's stacked, and all of those, there's not a soft 8-win team in there. They're all strong teams.
And when you look at that group, because I'm looking at, especially if you think Geneseo is going to fall in that field too, I guess the big question would be, do any of them have a chance against Rochester?
Well, I don't know that for sure. Obviously that's going to be a big challenge for them, but I have seen that Phillips team one time this year. And while it didn't go very well for them in the 4A final last year, I'd be very intrigued to see them have another swing at Rochester. They're extremely gifted. They are really, really good. Now, in the same vein, Rochester has proven time and time again that they are easily at the top of that mountain, and if someone's going to do it, they're going to have to really, really come strong at them, because that is a extraordinarily strong program that continues to just churn out special team after special team, almost to the point where you can't distinguish one from another.
We're talking with Steve Soucie from the Kankakee Daily Journal. The success factor has added in this year. Has that changed any of the way things have gone with the bracketing this year?
Well, I think the one thing when you look at what has happened with a success formula, you have the 2 teams that are both being moved up one class. So I think it leaves 5A a little thin, completely honest. And it's a strange situation because both of those teams that were moved up are leaving 5A and they're going to 6. So 5A is going to be open for someone. There's going to be an opportunity there. And 6A, in my opinion, those 2 teams are now moving up to that class, and I think those 2 teams are now the 2 favorites in 6A. So we might just be spinning our wheels here, to be totally honest with you.
And that's Montini, and who's the other one?
Sacred Heart Griffin, Springfield.
Where has the squeeze come? It looked like it's probably going to be in 4 or 5A. Is that where is everything kind of squeezing to the middle there when you look at the seating?
Yeah, it is. It's one of those situations, and that's usually what happens. The last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had a pretty good idea, I should say, of 30 of the 32 teams that are going to be in the field. But you're seeing the teams that are shuttling in there and fighting for those spots. Those last couple available spots, they seem to all be falling in 4 and 5A. So the bottoms of those brackets are changing a lot more than the brackets in, say, 7, 8, 1, and 2, because That's just the way it's happening right now. We've got a lot of teams that are moving in and out in the middle classes, and the fields at the bottom and top of 1, 2, 7, and 8, they're staying pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. You know, as things are finishing up here and you're getting a good handle on this, you know, who are some of the favorites you look at when you look kind of class by class?
Well, I mean, when you start down at the bottom, I mean, 1A is always seems to be decided by the Northwest Illinois Conference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to look there when you're talking about 1A. I mean, I like Lena Winslow a lot. Another team that I have, I think, good thoughts about and have all year, and they haven't let me down, is Stark County.
Yeah.
So then you go to 2A, and I think the overwhelming favorite in 2A is Tuscola.
Yep.
That's the team that I, you know, I mean, a lot of people were talking about the possibility that I'm sliding to 1. I think they're good enough to win either class, and it looks like they are finally settling into 2. I'll be honest, I think 3A, as currently constructed, is wide open. Some of the teams that I like, a team I saw last night, for example, in their 8-0 showdown with Mantino, Wilmington looks like they have the pieces to maybe go back and repeat. But to do so, they're going to have to get through another strong team right in my backyard. Bishop McNamara is a force to be reckoned with this year. They are 8-1. They play a schedule against 6 and 7A schools all year long. They're not going to be. There's nobody in 3A that's going to intimidate them. They're a very good team. And then you have to look to the south with St. Joe Ogden. That's another team that I think is a dangerous threat in 3A. When you go to 4, I mean, it's a simple conversation. It's Rochester until someone tells you it's not Rochester. You know, and that goes from there. You know, 5A, you can throw a dart right now, to be completely honest with you. I mean, a lot of people will tell you Joliet Catholic should be the favorite there, and I have a hard time really arguing with that, but it would not surprise me if somebody rose up in that class, because Joliet Catholic's been a little bit patchy over the second half of the season. Granted, they're playing really good teams, but they haven't been as dominant as I think a lot of people expected them to be. So 5A is a little open there. I would, if you put me on the spot, I would say I would probably still favor Joliet Catholic, but it's interesting. And 6A, I would say Sacred Heart Griffin is probably the odds-on favorite right now. But I mean, if we ended up getting a final of the 2 teams that were bumped up a class, it would not surprise me at all, and I think that would be a really good football game based on what we've seen. 7A, your guess is as good as mine, to be completely honest with you. I don't really have an established favorite there. Before last night, I would have said in 8A, it's a toss-up between Loyola and Homewood Flossmoor, but I think the loss to Bolingbrook by Homewood Flossmoor maybe exposes a few things that maybe the Vikings have a little trouble with, and I really like that team in Loyola. So that would be my favorite currently in 8A.
You know, you look last year, Rockford Lutheran opened the season against Peyton, who was 4-5. There's nobody sneaking into 4-5 with a conference championship this year, Steve?
Well, there was one in play last night that it could have possibly gone that way. But when Rolling Meadows beat Hersey in the mid-sub conferences, that eliminated the last team that had an opportunity to get into the playoffs with a 4-5 record, which was Wheeling. So no, there will not be a 4-5 team in the playoffs this year.
You know, you talk about 5A being open. You know, we've got a team here in Belvedere who, you know, a couple of years has snuck in at 5-4 and then given a top seed fits. You know, because Belvedere does something similar. They play, you know, 6 but mostly 7A schools and then get to drop down. You know, is that a team that, you know, at 6-3 could maybe go in and make some noise if you got a wide open field there?
Well, the one thing about the north side of the 5A bracket is, I think whoever comes out of that bracket is going to have a low seed.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you have in 5A North is you have 5 public league teams that are going to be on the top of the bracket. When I say that, I mean one of the top 8 seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't see any of them as actually, none of them are like Phillips.
Right.
These are schools that are not going to have the firepower to get themselves deep into the playoffs. So there's a real opportunity there for an underseed to come up and make some noise, dependent on where Joliet Catholic ends up in the bracket. I think they're going to be south, but it's really close geography-wise right now, so I'm not exactly sure on that. But when you come down to it, someone 10 through 16 in that bracket, I like just as much as I like some of the upper seeds in that bracket. So Belvedere could easily be one of those teams, make a deep run, and could, even though there might be a 12 by their name in regards to seeds.
You know, when you look at it, you've been doing this for a while, you enjoy doing it, you've seen the pluses and the minuses of the whole system, and there's all kinds of systems around the country. If they said to you, Steve Soucie, we trust you, you're the guru of all this, what changes would you make to make it so we didn't have issues coming up, maybe that would surprise us once in a while?
Well, I think there are a couple things about the system, and I know, I know the insides and outs of all of it, and I understand what the ramifications would be of this and that. I mean, I don't necessarily like the way that the system weighs wins the same, and I'm not sure what the answer is, because a win over Westinghouse is not the same as a win over Joliet Catholic.
Yeah.
I don't think we should treat them that way. So, I mean, that's one of my problems with the system, because you can have a team out there that's got 50 playoff points, and they're not worth 5 playoff points. I mean, it's just the way that it goes. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So, I mean, that's the way the system works. I would like it a lot better if we weighed the playoff point situation as the number of wins of the teams that you've defeated.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me if you played a 9-0 team and you got beat 56-0.
Mm-hmm, true.
I'm a lot more impressed if you beat an 8-win team that is a decent football team. I would like you to get more credit for the actual victories that you've amassed on your schedule. I mean, that's one of the things that I look at, and this is no knock on those schools, and I know that they're working hard, but if you look back at past history, the public league schools have not done well in the state playoffs. They're isolated examples of where they are. But, for example, in 7A tonight, you're either going to see them as a 1 or a 2 seed, and that's Whitney Young,
Mm-hmm.
and they have no business being anywhere near that high of a seed. It's just not going to happen. So I'd really love to see some sort of, I guess, balancing system established for where, you know, like teams that have historically not done well in the playoffs aren't rewarded with these really high seeds, because essentially they're playing a bunch of other teams that aren't going to do well in the playoffs, and the system rewards that. So, you know, those are my problems in a nutshell. I could go all morning on little tweaks that I would make if there was time allotted, but those are the major ones.
Steve, thanks so much for taking time. I know you've had a busy day, and you're getting ready for the TV show tonight. Matt will be there with you, of course, and good luck to you, and we'll keep updated, okay?
All right, thanks a lot.
We've been talking to Steve Soucie from the Kankakee Daily Journal. We'll be back with our final comments in just a moment here on the State Line Sports Hour here on News Talk 1440 WROK.
You already have your clock radio